So we can't really shorten anything to do with our website, which is not really important, but it sort of makes everything work a bit better, and it also saves space in our database later on, which obviously at the moment we're not working with because we haven't started to shorten URLs yet. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're echoing this URL. We need a function to be able to actually shorten the URL, but we first need a function to generate the code that's going to be shown at the end. So for the purposes of just testing this, we want to actually create a new variable called code, and this is going to be equal to gen_code, and that's it, because this is going to return a value, a 6th character, or a value that's 6 in length, of random numbers and letters, both uppercase and lowercase. So we have a code that's now going to equal a 6-character code. Again, we're going to create this gen code function in our func.inc.php, which we've included at the top of this file. And then I'm going to echo out something just for the purposes of testing this, and that's going to be http://min.bz/ and then we're going to append on this code here. So at the moment you'll see that we will retrieve an error simply for the fact that this gen code function does not exist. So let's just upload that, and let's go over and let's type in a URL. So now we have successfully shortened URL, but however we have a call to undefined function gen code because we haven't created the function yet. But now we can see that we are actually calling this on our url.php file. So let's go over to func.inc.php and come down a couple of lines and create a new function. And this is gen_code. It takes no parameters, as you've seen. We don't really need to pass anything because we're just generating and returning a code. And this function is going to create basically our code. So I'm going to create a variable called charset, and that's going to be equal to the alphabet in lowercase, uppercase, and then numbers 0 to 9. So for the purposes of making this tutorial shorter than it will already be, in this case it's a long tutorial, I'm just going to paste in that. So you feel free to just type this in yourself: A to Z in small, A to Z in capital, or lowercase and uppercase, and 0 to 9. Now what we want to do is randomize this char set, and we want to return it. So we want to shuffle this string. So I'm simply going to say return str shuffle, which is a PHP function, and this takes one parameter, which is going to be char set. Simple. So we're returning this as a shuffled string. Now at the moment we obviously are just keeping the same length because we're shuffling the string. So let's just have a look at that and see what that does. Okay, let's type in http://google.co.uk, press enter, and you can see that we've got http min.bz, which we specified over in our url.php here, and then our code. So we've successfully generated our code. However, it's a long code, so we need to find a way to sort of shorten this down to 6 characters. So we simply say wrap this whole thing here in our substring function, which is a PHP function also, and we're going to put a comma. This is going to take 3 parameters. The first parameter is the string that you want to create a substring out of. We're starting at position 0, which is from the first character, or the first character if you like, and then we're having it 6 in length. So all this is going to do is shorten our shuffled string, which we've already seen come up in our URL here, and we're shortening it to a length of 6. So we're starting from 0 and we're counting to 6. Okay, so we're starting here and saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but obviously because this is shuffled, it's going to generate a 6-character shuffled string. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And obviously we're returning it, so we can then assign it to this code variable, which we then put at the end of here. So let's go and refresh, press yes, back to min.bz, http google.co.uk, .uk, press enter, and you can see that now we've generated a URL properly. So we've got a 6 here. Again, if we then click shorten again, you can see it says already a min.bz URL. So it's useful to know that now when the user comes along, they type in a web address, press enter, successfully shortened your URL. If we press enter again, already a min.bz URL. So we've done that check for that reason. Now you can see it in action. Okay, so this is all well and good, but what we are actually not doing is actually storing this to allow the user to then take this and then paste it into their browser. So if I was to go over here and use the URL that's been shortened, we're getting not found because we're trying to find a folder. The first thing we're going to do is set up our database to store this here, so this here, against the URL we typed previously, which in this case I think was phpacademy.org. So we're storing the URL that the users typed against this code, so then when they do type in this, we're going to redirect them to the original URL. So we're completing our sort of process of the URL shortener. But there are a few other things we need to do and a few other functions we need to create to ensure this works perfectly. So let's go ahead and set up our database and our table. Okay, so I've come over to phpMyAdmin. I've already created a database called Shortener. Because I'm working with cPanel, it's put the min underscore there. If you're working on localhost, it will look a bit different, but don't worry. As long as you know how to create the database, I'm then going to take you through creating the table itself. So we're going to create a table called URLs. We're going to be using 3 fields to store the ID, which is just for unique purposes, unique record, and we need a URL and then the code. So this one is called URL ID. We're setting the type to int because this is going to be an auto increment integer, so auto increment there. We're going to set a length of this to 6 because we shouldn't need more than that. This is just the length of the thing. So for example, if we had, we'll start with 1 and then it will go to 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. The value of this, I mean, not the length. And we don't really need more than 6. I mean, if you are expecting to have a lot of URLs shortened, then you can of course increase this to maybe 8 or anything like that. Default it's 11, so we're going to create this as 6 for now. We're also going to put the index as primary, and like I've already checked, auto increment, which is going to increment this number upwards every time a new record is inserted. We now need the actual URL, and that's going to be a varchar, which is a variable character. So I'm going to set the length to this as say 2000 to have upwards of 1 to 2000 characters in length, which you shouldn't need more than that. And then we come across to the code, which is again a varchar because we're storing uppercase, lowercase and numbers, so we're not going to store this as an int. We're going to store it as a varchar, and its length of 6 because we're only generating a code which is 6 characters in length. So let's go ahead and press save down here, and you'll see we've get an overview of our table structure. We could insert some dummy data, but we're not going to do that yet. We're going to go ahead and create our shorten function, which is going to actually shorten the URL. Well, it's not. It's going to insert a record into here with the code that we've generated and the URL that was typed. So really we've actually done everything. We just need to create the function that's going to put this into the database. But we also need to check if the code already exists. So we're going to be performing a query beforehand to check if the code already exists. Now, just for example, if someone was to shorten google.co.uk, let's go and use the page as an example. If we were to shorten google.co.uk and we were returned with this, everything's fine, everything's working, we've shortened the URL. However, what happens if we then try to shorten phpacademy.org and it, for some, out of the many varieties of code that we could produce, produces the same code? It's actually going to insert a new record into our table with the same code. and therefore the URL will have been shortened, but we're going to have two records with the same code. And what's going to happen then is MySQL is not going to obviously pick up on this, because it's not very clever in terms of, oh, I've got two records with this. It's going to redirect to the first URL that's associated with this code. So if the first one was google.co.uk and the second one was phpacademy.org, and we had the same code, it's going to find the first available record, which would be google.co.uk. So someone expecting to be directed to phpacademy.org might be directed to google.co.uk. So hopefully that makes sense, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to outline and create the functions that are going to check this, and that's all going to be done in here in our url.php before we pass it back to the user in index.php so they can see it. So we've generated our code, that's fine. We then want to come down and we want to create a while loop to check that while the code doesn't exist, we input the URL to the database.